development and system innovation as a type of innovation that actually is needed for sustainable development. The content of this part will be obviously, first of all, sustainable development, and then we will see the three pillars of sustainable development as it is usually schematized: the environmental dimension, the socio-ethical dimension, and the economic dimension. Okay? It's a way to simplify a very complex issue, but it's good to do that, and then maybe you can deepen the things, but to have this as a framework, it's good. And then I will go to something that is really key important for us and for everyone. I would say the size of the change to move towards a sustainable development and the quality of change. So which is the type of change that we have to envision, that we have to work for in relation to the size of change that we have to achieve. And that will lead us to speak about system innovation and understanding a little bit what's this about. Sustainable development. All right. Key principle was introduced, definitely. This is my synthesis, but sustainable development is a social and productive development that take place within the limits set by the environment and meets the needs of the present generation, as it was said before, without compromising those of the future generation. But here adding something within a worldwide equitable distribution of resources. Okay? So the resources has to be distributed in an equitable way. This was firstly introduced, maybe you know, at the end of the 80s in a document of the United Nations, Our Common Future, by the in a Brundtland report called Our Common Future, and she was the minister of anyone from Norway? Yeah, great. No, she really did something great. That was not really. Now it looks simple, but at that time, thinking about the future generation, thinking about the resources could end, was not there. It was not really in the set of our mind. And anytime you have to think to something new and propose new paradigm that now is actually here, and several among you knows even about that, need to be introduced, and sometimes we need some person able of doing that. And then we go back to Brazil in Rio 92, where we had the first conference of the United Nations Environment and Development, where the concept of sustainable development were for the first time, taken to the wider public opinion, and not only to the public opinion, but many nations were there gathered discussing about this. And then there are a few other, but 10 years later, in 2002, now we're going to South Africa, in Johannesburg, we had another UN meeting where the sustainable development was redefined, let's say, and a new agenda was updated. And then a few other things, but I stopped my list, which is not complete, but just to highlight the main, to the UN Decade on Sustainable Energy for All, 2014, not 20,124, once more. That would be not really a decade, but something like a millennium. But that kind of a decade on sustainable energy for all, it came out when we most recently understood that within sustainable development, sustainable energy accessible to all was a key pillar and a key leverage to reach sustainable development. And this is why we will be giving a good attention even into this course and into the design exercise to this part. And this is why we made one research that ended a while ago with African colleagues, really specific about this topic. And more recently, this is the last, documents issued by the United Nations at the end of 2015 in New York. The Sustainable Development Summit, they proposed the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These are the 17 sustainable goals. I'm not going into the describing those. I will make a different introduction to sustainable development, speaking about the different dimension of sustainability. The sustainability dimension are the environmental sustainability, let's say the chemical and physical dimension of it, so not to exceed the biosphere and geosphere resilience. If you are a designer, you should be familiar with the concept of resilience. You know what is this? Related to the material is the propriety of the material to get back to after it has been hurted, for example, or to get back to its original shape and proprieties and so on. And we can apply this concept or this characteristic to the Earth, all right, or to the geosphere and the biosphere. So not to exceed this geosphere and biosphere resilience, it means that the humankind production and consumption system with the resource extraction and emission cannot exceed the capacity, the Earth capacity of being able not to go in that situation out of the equilibrium in which they provoke irreversible damage, from which we cannot get back, right? Like, for example, global warming or other things like that, but we'll come to this later. The socio-ethical dimension is related to what we said before, two issues. One is related to the fact that we have to leave to the future generation the same amount of resources, or I prefer to say the same satisfaction that we can get from such a resources. Because if we are using too much resources now, we cannot expect that the future generation can use the same resources. Maybe we have to use it in a different way, and we have to design, and we will see how. But this is the point. And the other thing is the equity principle. So an equity in the distribution of resources or the satisfaction that you can get from those resources. Sometimes we speak about the environmental space. Every person has the right to the same environmental space, to the same amount of resources as the others. And then, of course, there is even the economic, and I'd say even normative and legislative dimension. So an economically practicable and prosperous solution. So the environmental and socio-ethical has to happen in an economic system, whatever it is. I'm not saying here to decide which is the system, but that makes the environmental and socio-ethical dimension to work. So let me say a few things more about the environmental dimension. Maybe you know, but I just come to, I want to say few things to come up with some conclusion related to this. You know, as I said before, some years ago, before the economic boom of the 60s, we really didn't have in mind. For you, it's not clear, but people, humankind, didn't have in mind that there could be a limit to the use of resources. They were simply happy. I mean, and why not? I mean, they were using washing machine to work. Everything was easier and doing things in a different way, and that was going really very nicely and fun. Maybe not for the all, but for those that were able to have access to those products. And why not? Why not in this case? Good quality of life. And this is not again to say something, but we understood right after that there were some limits. That was after those periods, 60s and a little bit after, was the big pollution. Maybe you don't know that, of the lake, the big lake of the North America. And there was something that was not, all the industry were releasing all pollutant in those lakes, and then they realized that something was happening there. All the fishes were dying, or many other things happening, and so they start to say, "Oh my God, we have to do something." And then in London at the end of the 50s, something like 4,000 people died. You know why? Because of smog. You know smog, where it's coming from? It's a composition, you know? She said yes? No? Smog and fog. Yes, because they have lots of fog in London, as we in Milan sometimes. But when it gets mixed with smoke because the industry were within the city, as here in Milan, whatever. Well, that really was an awful problem, like it is right now, with the with the with the pollution of small particles and so on. That stopped creating lots of problems, like in that period, the oil tanker, we are just cleaning, their tanker in open sea without taking him in. Who cares? It's just a little thing. We clean it, and but then we discovered that that was not really that good. There was some limits to that, and so we start discovering. It seems far obvious now. At that time was not. And just for your knowledge, this was the first book in 1972 by Meadows and a few other colleagues of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the US, Boston. And they made first a computer simulation of what could happen if we go on in this way, right? And they start to say, well, there are some limits to growth. Limit to growth was really a very strange sentence at that time, but that was the first scientific, study related to that. Now, when we are speaking about environmental sustainability and the irreversible damage, usually we speak about global warming, ozone layer depletion, acidification, eutrophication, toxicity, waste, and few other. Maybe I believe that you are aware of most of those, but I want to give you some information about this. Here about global warming, I want to show you an animation made by the NASA, the US, After global warming, they made it in 30 seconds what happened in 136 years from the end of the 1880. If this, okay, and the address is not working, so I do it as one. Oops. Oops. Okay, you see there, now we are in 19, we go up, now in 20, the financial crisis, we are in 50, it's the economical boom, and here you can see how it is heating up. We are getting to the 2000, now these are the day where we are. And this is a simulation of what really happened. You get a point. There was, I showed this, but I want to show you some other data. These are coming from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Are you aware about that? It's nevertheless the biggest group of researchers ever built around the world to study about global warming. And now the new president of U.S. is saying something against this taking resources away. And we are really concerned about that because U.S. nevertheless, in terms of scientists, give a great contribution to that. Nevertheless, they came out with some data that are really, reliable, and they are saying that the humankind is really, without any doubt, influencing this. This is the atmospheric concentration of CO2, how it has increased, and in the period between the 60s and today, let's say, it has increased by 20%. If we go back to the 70-50 to today is when the industrial revolution started, it's 40%, but you see that recently when the boom started, it really increased quite a lot. And the atmospheric concentration of CO2 and other global warming gases are the highest registered through ice coring. You know that they can register, they core the ice, and they can check in the past time how much concentration of CO2 was in the previous period. Is the highest over the last 800,000 years. And this what makes the temperature to increase. And you see there some data, but just to give you an idea, the last 3 decades has been the warmest since 1850, and the last decade was the warmest ever registered. And this, what is the heating, what is provoking is the sea ice extension has decreased, and in average, it has decreased in immediate period each decade something around 4%. And I give you here even a picture that this is the North Pole ice extension. This is in 1980, and look in 2012 how much it has decreased. That's a lot of ice. That's a lot of, this is really a lot. Something, I mean, and you get that is defining the equilibrium of the overall system. It's a lot, and it's all caused by humankind. In fact, that is the increase of the sea level from 90 to 2010, 1.7 millimeter a year. More recently, from 1993 to 2010, is 3.2 millimeter. So here we are. But if we look, and these are the forecasts, to 2100, what about the temperature? And many are saying that if we increase by 1 Celsius degree, this is really, we have to be scared about that. Okay, now someone put the target of 2 degrees because it seems that we cannot do much better, but this is already worrying. I give you a picture of this. I took a snapshot of the area where we are, the Mediterranean area, where you are right now. So without any specific intervention of CO2 reduction, the increase in 2100 would be around 4 to 7 Celsius degrees, which is much, much over the one that is already warming. And if we do something, it seems that we cannot get that lower anyhow of an increase of 1 and 1.5 Celsius degrees. And what about the sea level? How can it increase? Well, without any specific action to mitigate CO2 and other global warming gases and temperature increase, it would be around 1 meter higher. And you can say, oh, nice, I can swim better in my other places or whatever. That's really changing a lot. 1 meter more around the world would change everything. It's not that only simply, places that exist now will be disappearing because they will be under the water. Is there anyone from the Netherlands? No? You know what they call Netherlands? Because they are neither part of the country is under the level of the water. So they are using lots of resources to pump out the water from those places. This is for me one of the reasons why they are those that are researching a lot about sustainable development, these kind of things, because they are afraid to be flooded in tanks, that they are great engineer and designer in doing these kind of things. But the point is that we don't have to pump out the water. We have to do something so that we don't need to pump out the water, right? And that could be really, really very critical. But it's not only a matter of water coming here and there, it's even a matter of water not coming somewhere. And so there are some forecasts of precipitation, rain, decrease. So looking again to the Mediterranean area, see there, Italy or some part of, she's from Egypt, so Egypt is in there. So without any specific intervention on CO2 reduction, we would have a decrease of between 10 to 20% of rainfall. 10 to 20%. It means that it will be dry, cultivate. We cannot think about cultivation, or we have to take water with a consumption of energy that it could be immense. 20% less is a lot. You know, when now they are saying it's a dry season, we are facing some problem. Dry season, yes, maybe 0 point something less, not 20% less. It's a lot. The point is that even though we do something, the forecasts are not that positive. So we have to do, maybe we have to do a lot. We have to do some kind of revolution within the system that we are having. Ozone layer depletion, you know, they are coming, the ozone layer that is protecting in the upper part of the atmosphere from the ultraviolet radiation, you know, like that bursts on the right side to get some sun is has to put you know, some centimeter of sun protecting cream over the body, but it's really not enjoying the sun anymore because the other person is using the refrigerator. What the refrigerator is doing is the fact that you are using some cooling system or you are using some gases in the foaming that of the walls to take the cold inside the CFC, chlorofluorocarbons, or other gases that are able to destroy the ozone. Ozone is O3, and someone from the chemical department of Polytechnic will listen to me right now will say me something, but it cut, you know, O3, it cut the O3 and it makes O2, normal oxygen, you know. And but the normal oxygen is not doing what the ozone is doing to protect. Ozone, which is quite bad at our level, but up there it's great. And this is what happened since 1979 till today. You see, there has been a stabilization, in fact, of the system, though the effects are long lasting. Something could be like 20 to 30 years before to see what is happening. But the CFC and other gases has been phased out. So you can see that in some occasion, we are even able to stop the system. If you as humankind understood something, we can do something. We can intervene. Eutrophization. The point is that yes, there are something like what we used to have in the detergent, phosphate and other things that now we are not using anymore in detergent, at least not in industrialized countries, but we are still using in agriculture, in other places that are, you know, the algae and other are very happy. They like, they eat a lot and they grow a lot. The point is that eutrophization or nutrification, it means that this algae and other grows a lot because they are, you know, like they eat it and they grow, but they grow a lot, but they cause other problems related to the ecosystem. For example, in a lake, well, there you have the image of a person that is swimming and then coming out with all this seaweeds or algae over the head, which is not that nice. But and that is a friend of mine that I asked, please take a picture because I want to show something to my student. He hated me. He said, no, I'm not saying that you are Francesco Pireta. And no, but the problem is not really that one, is that it could be this, but this we can face. We can start to like swimming with algae and seaweeds, but this algae, for example, they don't let the oxygen to go into the water. And you say the fish don't get the water, don't take the oxygen. No, they have the, how do you call it, branchia? Those things here. Gills. Okay, thanks, gills. They take the oxygen. They have this kind of filters to take the oxygen that is anyhow in the water because they need it for the. And so it's another big problem. Here I have an image from the French from China. This is an algal bloom in Yangtze Lake in the Yunnan province, where actually that's a great, a big problem actually. Acidification is acid rain, you know, and as in the image you see here is coming, for example, from paints or other things, you know, with not water-based but with solvent. Then they go out to the air, to the atmosphere. They join with other. They are collected by the drops of water, and they drop down, for example, over the David of Michelangelo in Florence, and they corrode the statues, but they provoke problems to other things like trees and vegetation and so on. Or to the coral reef, which is actually a very important ecosystem that determines the equilibrium of the overall ecosystem around it. Toxicity is again another problem that we are facing every day. But here I really want you to guess here. This is a report from the International Energy Agency, 2016. Can you guess the premature death for each year for air pollution given by fine particle O3 are only 6 million and a half people. 6 million and a half. 6 million and a half are number of a civil war, of a war. They are the same number of, I don't want to say, during the Second World War. These are awful numbers. We are not aware, and they are there. People knows, or should know. Someone knows. And why they are not there? Well, not all of you knows that. And if you don't know, if you are young and you are educated, and what about the other? Why they are not spreading this news? Why they are not changing something? This is killing us more than many other things. Is even the problem of waste, among others. And today I give you some number. The municipal solid waste is 1.3 billion tons a year. I don't know what's that. It seems quite a lot. But to give you an idea, it's 1.2 kilograms per person a day in average. But the forecast for 2025 is that will increase to 2.2 billion tons a year, and per person a day 1.4. This is because the world population is forecasted to increase. But this is happening the same way all around the world? No. Look at the reddish, the dark red part, of course, are those with the highest waste in terms of kilogram per person. They are there in the Northern America, northern part of Europe, Australia, and you see. Okay, so I made just a little panorama of problem that you know, but I want to take out some data to give you an idea of where we are. And I think that this is needed. Maybe you know, but maybe some of you didn't. So I need to have it there. I want you to remember, even as a person, not only for the course, but even as a person that maybe can speak with other person and talk about these things. Alright? this is the another data that I want to, another estimate that I want to take to your attention is the Earth Overshoot Day that is taking in account which is the date in 1 year in which the humankind worldwide has used the resources that can use without, not using more than the same system is able to reproduce, using producing more CO2 than the ocean and the forest can absorb, killing and eating more fishes than the sea can produce, and so on. All right, and the Earth Overshoot Day of 2006 was in August, 8th of August. Okay, so already there, at the mid of the year, we were already using more than the Earth could give to us. And this is happening in the same way everywhere. I hope that you can see that this is said in a different way, but how many Earths do we need if the world population would live like, look, in Australia, we would need 4.5 world in terms of resources. We go to US, 4.8, in Switzerland, and so on, where is Italy 2.7, China 2, Brazil 1, India 0.7. Okay, and then if you go, of course, to other low-income countries, it's definitely different, the situation. So when speaking about environmental sustainability, we have really to say that we are close to the collapse of the system. Collapse of the system, it means that we are close to the situation in which we won't be able anymore to get back to the original equilibrium of the ecosystem, to have the resources to feed us and whatever. Because the energy and the resources that we have to use to clean up the water, to live, will be polluting more than the pollution that we are taking away. So it won't be possible anymore. We will collapse down. And we are close to that. Some years ago, it was said, yes, maybe we have to do this in some decades and blah, blah. Now it's not anymore, it's not that much anymore a matter of decades. It's more a matter of some years. And people, especially politicians, don't take this into consideration. Frankly speaking, because politicians are too linked to some production and consumption system and some big power that are afraid of losing those power, because they are commanding, especially in the energy sector. And so very briefly, what are the actions if we want to move towards an environmental sustainability? It's very easy to be said. We have to preserve resources, so less and more renewable. Renewable means that they can regrow. And prevent the pollution, so less pollution and a pollution that is more biocompatible, that is biodegradable or other things and so on. I don't go that much into the detail of this, if not, the lecture will be too long. The socio-ethical sustainability, the second pillar. I spoke about the equity principle we said before, so I can read it. That is coming from the summit in Rio, the first stage, but nevertheless, it's saying that every person in a fair distribution of resources has a right to the same environmental space, in other terms, to the same availability of global resources. And here a report, because I like this definition that came out from the EU Sustainable Development Strategy, first issue 2006 and then 2009, which is speaking not just about the social equity or the equity principle, but joining this with the social cohesion, saying the promotion of a democratic, socially inclusive, cohesive, healthy, safe and just society with respect for fundamental rights and cultural diversity that creates equal opportunity and combats discrimination in all its forms. Said this, what is the state of the art? Maybe you know that in average, the 25% of worldwide population is using 80% of resources, of global resources, basically industrialized contexts and countries. That means that 80% of population is using only 20% of those. And here, I want to use this picture to give you an idea of how the situation is not socio-ethically sustainable, or is not really an equitable situation. The size, this is a world map you see there, and the size of each territory is showing that the proportion of the population in each of those. So bigger it is, there is more people is living there. I show you this other that is saying for the same territory, which is the emission of CO2. Basically saying CO2 emission is related, for example, for the production of energy that is used for the production of product and blah blah and many other things and so on. And you see, look at Africa, the sub-Saharan Africa, how this is squeezed, and other things, how US, for example, is exploding, and other things. So this is saying that really the situation is unequal. And so what are the actions usually that we have to think about when we speak about socio-ethical sustainability? We have to eradicate poverty. This is one of the first issues. Then the promotion and principle and rules of democracy, the promotion of human rights and freedom, achievement of peace and security, access to information, training and employment, respect for cultural diversity and regional identity, and so on. So these are some key figures. Then we will understand, because we will be working even designing system for socio-ethical issues, how can we tackle this big issue within our designing activity? Can we deal with the democracy, or, well, of course, we don't want to export democracy as someone wants to do that. This is not the point, but even speaking about that or other things. So we will come to that, because we have been working and studying, and you will see that there is something that we can do even for the socio-ethical issue. Even though the problem looks so huge that you say, how can I tackle this? Well, speaking about eradicating poverty, there has been an international commitment about that. I'm going fast, but in Rome in 1996 was the first big summit of different worldwide countries, led by Food and Agricultural Organization, where they agreed to cut by half the number of people suffering from chronic hunger. And then a key meeting of or summit was the United Nations Millennium Summit, in which they developed some goals, the so-called Millennium Development Goals. And the first one was to, in fact, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, and to reduce by half from 1990 to 2015, almost yesterday, the percentage of undernourished person, so people suffering from chronic hunger. And what was the state of the art in 2000, when they started? It was like 1.1 billion people lived on less than $1 a day, 2.7 billion billion people, so half of the world live on less than $2 a day. 1 billion children is 1 on 2 children in the world live in poverty. 1 on 2. I hope I don't look moralistic, but I have 2 daughters. In a strange world in which I don't know where my 2 daughters live, it means that 1 of the 2 is in poverty and the other live well. I don't know. This is something that, sorry, I even get some emotion about it. But this is striking. This is really something. How can we stand this? Okay, sometimes it's fun. It's difficult to understand. Even I'm doing my life. I'm doing my lecturing here. I'm doing my things. And I do even. So it's not this. It's not that we have to limit this, but we have to somehow to take this much more into our consideration. We have to get a much better commitment. And as designer, and this is what I want to teach you in this course, you have to know that you can do something, even as a designer in this context. Sorry, this things that. And then, like 11 billion children die every day before the 5th birthday. My 2 daughters are 9 and 13. Lovely. I will take them here to show you. 11 billion people a year. 1/3 of that are due to poverty, and here are other data about access to water and so on. But I come now. Okay, so this was the situation when this whole nation, United Nations, said we have to do something against, and in 2015 we have to reduce by half the number of undernourished in percentage. Speaking about percentage from it, it's an ugly. It's a percentage. It's from people. What is a percentage? The people increase. By the way, well, we can say that in fact this is 1990, 2014, so 2016. The number of chronicle of undernourished people has decreased. Now there are only 795 million people suffering from chronic hungers. And you know how many are the inhabitants of Europe? 742 million. So it's like to say for those living in Europe that all Europe, in a recombination of the world population, is suffering from chronic hunger. Would I'm European. I feel like a cosmopolitan. I don't feel that much, like European or Italian. Would we ever accept this? If we take this into... The point is that it's even worse, because if you go and look in the poorest area, we can report even an increase in the undernourished number of people. If you go in Africa, and especially in sub-Saharan Africa, there is an increase from 182 million to 233 million people suffering. And this is why, luckily, let's say what will happen, but at least it was said, declared, accepted by all the nations in the UN summit in New York. The first 2 development goal is to end poverty in all its form and everywhere. And the second one, end hunger and achieve food security. Okay, I said something about this, but again, I want you to take to some real true number. Okay? So it's easy to speak about this. No, these are, don't care. These are numbers. It's not only numbers, these are people. 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 Like me, you. Somewhere else. But people. Okay. The socio-ethical sustainability is somewhere else. Well, it's not just that we should somehow, and we have to find a way in which we are more concerned about this, in which we are more committed about this, all. But said this, this is not just a matter of what we call, or is called developing country. About this definition, I have lots of things to say. Because in a global market, actually, what we are doing, we are delocalizing. So many products that are coming here are made in another place where people are living in such a condition. So what we are doing here is very connected, many times more and more connected to to some phases of the value production chain of what we are using as products or services. On the other side, even industrialized countries are living poverty, even in the US, even here in Italy, and in other countries. I think that many of you can tell me something about this. So it's not just a problem or a matter somewhere else that we should take care, but it's even a problem that is connected to what we are doing here for two basic reasons. And now this is just a terminological issue, but has even a sense. So I don't like to speak about countries. I prefer to speak about context, because even, it could be a low-income country with a rich context. Could be a high-income industrialized context with country with low-income context. So we are speaking about context basically. And I didn't write here, but when speaking about that we as Italy or other are from a developing country, are we a developed country? Is a developed country a country that is destroying the environment? This is underdeveloped. Developed has a different meaning. It's not that it's destroying the environment. It's killing the earth in which we are living. I'm not saying that the other are developed if they are living in poverty. This is not. But we cannot say that our system is developed or the mainstream system is not developed. Not at all. The economic sustainability. Here again a report. The definition of that you can find in this sustainable development strategy that has been approved by the EU a few years ago is to speaking about economic prosperity, to promote prosperous, innovative, knowledge-rich, competitive, and eco-efficient economy, which provide high living standard and full and high quality employment. And what are the actions that we can do? Well, here lots of things could be said. I really have to say in 1 minute, but 3 things that I believe is important. One thing is the proper attribution of cost to resources, what is called sometimes to internalization of costs. Many times we have, let's speak about a car. We were speaking about pollution in the city. A car, okay. A car is polluting, and what is causing the pollution of this car? Lung illness. Then someone is going to the hospital. The hospital is paying to cure this person, hoping that this person can be, can get back to a good health and so on. But this is really a cost. The health is one of the biggest costs. All right. Internalization of cost would mean that the cost of curing that person is embedded in the cost of the car. So when I'm buying the car, I'm buying the cost of what is causing in turn economic cost. What is causing? Is causing a damage. Someone is paying. Why it has to be paid by all of us as a taxes? Why this has not to be paid by the product that is producing this? If this would happen, what you say is strange, no? Some economists are speaking about it. What would happen? That the cost of the car would be, no one would buy a car because it would be so high because you have to pay. So the day after, you would have, a car moving without, all energy power, maybe with a solar roof and whatever, or just going with a public transportation system and so on. Because it would be, economically unaffordable, if not by the most rich person in this world. Then they are so little that maybe they would not put it much. So this is one thing. The other thing is to orientate the main ongoing transition. We are in a world, we are facing rapid changes. For example, as I wrote there, interconnection, service, information. I make you an example. Now, once we used to, maybe you never wrote a letter. I don't know. I used to write letter, postcard, and something like this. Now there is the email. Okay, the email is compared to a letter in which you use a paper, you use the ink, you use an envelope, you post it, it is transported, and so on. Compared to the email is actually dematerializing a lot compared to that system. So it's a system that, by the technology, it's really has a potential of a dramatic potential of dematerialization. Okay? Then the truth is that it's not really happening like this because there is called the push and print. I don't know how to say, but because that when the email, this new system arrives, it seems that we are printing much more than we used to do before because it arrived print. But the point is that this has a potential, and then we have to design a system or a product service system in which this may not happen. But the point is that there is a great potential. Okay, so we have to understand and why it's important when you have this big transition running. They are already going. They can change a lot. Since we have to change a lot, if we are able to understand which of those are potentially reducing the environmental impact or enhancing social equity and cohesion, if we are able to address those in the right direction, we are already, in a fast track, and by simply addressing a little bit, we can gain a lot. Okay, so it's good to know. As I said for the example, okay, email is good, just address it in a way in which it's impossible to put a nail on the push and print button so that you get hurt. I don't know. No, joking. It's you just to do something that is design the system in a way in which this potential is emphasized. So it's very important. On the opposite, not really on the opposite, but complementary, it is interesting to understand which are the business model or offer model, which are niche models, so not mainstream, not big transition, but they have a great potential for being environmentally, socio-ethically, and economically sustainable. And to enhance those and to make those to become the mainstream, to become the new way of production and consumption. And for example, we are speaking about sustainable product service system and distributed economies. And this will be the core of our course here. Okay? So they are not the mainstream, though we are in the service society, but we can understand how to design this and then how to design this to be appreciated and to become the new solution and substitute the unsustainable solution are existing today. About the size and the quality of change. Sustainability. So said all we have said. Here I want you to guess again. There has been several estimations, and you get some idea. I show you some data and something and so on. But by 2050, can you guess how much the production and consumption system of the industrialized country, I'm speaking about US, Europe, or Australia, or, industrialized countries, has to reduce the consumption of resources of how much to satisfy the needs and wants, taking into consideration even the equity principle, so that every person has the right to the same amount of resources or satisfaction. How much we have to consume less? 90%. This is an estimate, okay? Someone may say yes, or some a little bit more, a little bit less, and this is an average. Nevertheless, though it has been evaluated by different, no, it's not me. I'm working on this, and someone else is doing this tremendous calculation and simulation, right? But it's saying something. It's saying something about the quality of change. We have to promote radical changes, a discontinuity in the way in which we produce and consume. The artifacts that we see around, the services that we see around, are not the ones that are sustainable. They have to be different. It's not to say that we will be sad and depressed because we cannot have joy. But I mean, if you take a car here in average in Milan, you go 12 kilometers per hour. Is this a joy? Is this pleasure? Maybe there are different ways, public transportation in which they are cutting your hair. No, I mean, we can really figure out different systems in which we can have still a pleasant, even a more pleasant, enjoyable life, but definitely with less consumption of resources. And we will see this in this course. This will be discussed. We will work on radical innovation, on system innovation. In fact, when speaking about innovation, not changes, but innovation, we as designers together with others are working on innovation. We have to think and promote even system innovation. What do we mean by system innovation? Maybe you are in a product service system course, but it's not just to speak about, if we think about the car, the product or the process, we are thinking in a larger term to the whole supply system, the offer, the demand, and the offer, fulfilling a specific demand of satisfaction. We call it, we'll see later, unit of satisfaction. That of mobility, moving from here to there, or having access to some information. Maybe I need to move to get a recipe from the doctor. Do I need to take a car to go there or something? Maybe I could have it in a different way and so on. But nevertheless, it means to think to the overall value production chain and to all the actors are included into that. That means to move from a product to a system level. because in that way we can innovate much more than just thinking to the process or to the product. And second, it's not enough to have a radical innovation. No, but we have to, it's not enough to have radical innovation, we have to have diffuse innovation. Because if only few persons get, this product, service, or system, which are dramatically and drastically with a lower environmental impact, but this is not diffused, we are not solving the problem. So they have to be feasible in the market, whatever is the market, or the context, whatever is the context, and appreciated as a better solution. And here, the issue of the aesthetic of sustainability is coming up.